Hi, my name is Tom, and this is What It Takes. Each episode, I sit down with real business owners to talk about their journey, the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. Let's dive in. All right, welcome back to Business Owners Tell All What It Takes, the podcast where we go beyond the success stories and uncover what it really is like to build, grow, and sustain a successful business. Today's guest is someone who has taken a unique path in the hospitality industry by combining business strategy, creativity, operational excellence to build an experience-driven brand. Joining us is Nikita Khandheria, founder and CEO of ERIA, a fast-growing hospitality events-based company in the Bay Area. Since launching ERIA in 2025, Nikita has quickly established the company as one of Northern California's rising hospitality brands, producing luxury weddings, founder retreats, corporate events, brand activations, and immersive experiences for clients, including some names like Google, Salesforce, Hilton, Webflow, Johnson & Johnson, and Anthropologie. What makes Nikita's story especially interesting is that entrepreneurship started long before this company. She launched her first hospitality business as a teenager and then later bought out her investors, successfully led business acquisitions, and ultimately reimagined the company into the brand that she leads today. With an academic background in mathematics, economics, and computer science from the University of St. Andrews and William and Mary, she brings both analytical thinking, creative vision to every business decision that she makes. Today, we're focusing on one of the most important topics for every entrepreneur, and that is the business planning side. We'll explore how planning evolves as a company grows, how to prepare for expansion without losing quality, and how intentional planning helps turn ambitious ideas into sustainable businesses. Nikita, welcome to the podcast. We are so excited to have you here. To start us off a little bit, just give us a little bit about yourself and like your journey, both personal and professional, and how you got to where you're at now.
Oh wow, Jimmy, you gave me a very strong intro right there. I don't know if I have much story left. I say that I'm in the business of making life a little bit more fun. I think that I'm definitely notorious for working too hard, or I mean, the place that I get my coffee in the morning, I did a meeting recently. One of the people that I was meeting got there before me, and the barista was like, "Oh, I know who you're meeting. You're meeting the girl that's always working." And I was like, "That's so sad. I get my coffee there, and it's only been like 3 weeks that I've been getting my coffee, and she knows me as the girl that works too much." And so I think a lot of us are very guilty of not taking the time to build out experiences that makes life a little bit more fun. And you only live once. And so I always say that, I want to experience everything. And I think that's where we come in, right? So although we do some, traditional dinners and beautiful tablescapes, one of the things that I'm proudest of our company for doing is doing the creative things that, you would never otherwise get to experience. I mean, in this very spot that I'm standing, we just did a C-suite group where we did a fire breathing class for them. So instead of doing a team bonding where, they'd be like, okay, let's share our secrets and make friends, we actually had them learn how to breathe fire. And I could show you a video. It's so cool. And so whether it's birthdays, weddings, graduations, we just like to come in there and make it an experience worth having and make it something that you're go home and you're like, you know what? I'm actually so excited for the next time that I take time off or the next time that I get to have a birthday because I get to do something and, that's what life's all about.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So, I kind of want to dive back because this is something that I found super interesting. So, you started your first hospitality company as a teenager, and then you evolved into what you have now. Kind of like walk us through that. That's amazing to me.
I think it's funny that I would say my entire journey has been very full of pivots, right? And it's everyone's like, how did you end up here, right? Because I'm a computer science math kid. And I'm like, honestly, it's just about taking the next step forward and taking the step that takes you closer to where you want to be. So when I was 13, I actually built two nonprofit clinics. So it wasn't directly in the hospitality space. And the people that I worked, so I signed an exclusivity with this fertilizer company to come and train the women to be able to give them economic independence, because a lot of them were stuck in very abusive relationships. And
Mm.
that's not the point of the podcast. So I'm not going to get too deep into that one, but they ended up being the people that funded me when I was 17 to open a restaurant. And so I think that there's so much to be said about when you're doing a good job at something and you're good at what you do, that the next steps will automatically come in front of you. And so one of the biggest things I say, like my two biggest things are like make new mistakes, right? Be willing to pivot, be willing to take vicarious learnings from people. And then the second thing is just do a good job at whatever you do. Like if you wake up every day and you're like, I'm going to be the best at this, success will follow. Just really hone in on the excellence and opportunity is going to come out of everywhere for you, right? Because nobody can take that away from you. If you are good at something, you are good at it.
Yes, and we were talking a little bit earlier, and I love that phrase, that make new mistakes. And I think that's kind of what like our business planning needs to be, is that we learn from others, and then we're not afraid to kind of step out of our comfort zone and make some of those mistakes. One of the things that I learned a long time ago was that you know, losses are only losses if we don't take the lesson. And I love that. I just love that attitude. It's so mind blowing and pivotal to me just for life in general on being able to make new mistakes. I don't want to make old mistakes. I don't want to make your mistake. I want to make my own new mistake. And I just oh my gosh, I like when I was stalking you, I probably replayed that about like 5 times and I loved it. It was just so awesome. Oh, go
I
ahead.
think that it's the hardest pill to swallow, though. And I'll be very honest. Like when I started, I had so many people that were like, we want to mentor you. And, they were like, we'll teach you things. And, I think that there's so many people that want to share their learnings. And I think for me, when I was starting out, I had the hardest time being like, oh, I don't want to be exactly where you are, so I shouldn't take lessons from you, right? Like,
Hmm.
why take learnings from someone who isn't where you want to be? And I think that what really helped me understand that was when I started reading a little bit more. And when you're reading, you can skip past the parts that you don't necessarily care for and then focus in on the parts that you care for. And it's a little harder to do it in person when I was starting, there was hundreds of people that kept coming up and they're like, this is our advice, this is our advice. And I was like, I don't want so much advice because like I want to be able to I want to be able to stumble and fall. And I think it took a lot of time for me to get to the point that I was like, you know what? I read like what is it? Good to Great.
Hmm.
Amazing book. Fantastic book, right? And as I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And that was one of the first few. And then after that, I got really big into Harvard has a full archive of case studies that you can read. And I've become like everyone's least favorite person because like every third word that comes out of my mouth is like, oh, Arnold. And people are like, who's Arnold? And I'm like, the LVMH, you know LVMH. And so I speak almost entirely in like business case studies. So I think being able to separate, every Tom, Dick, and Harry who's giving you advice on the street from being able to be like, no, you know what? Like I would love to learn from Mr. Price the way that he did the cash flow statements over at Costco to make sure that they're always running a positive cash flow is crazy. And it's such a brilliant way of thinking. Or the way that Visa
Hmm.
set up their partnership with Costco and the way that that had originally come about, right? And so there's so many creative lessons that you can see what worked and what didn't work that I think that there's just so much wealth of knowledge out there that, there's no reason not to capture it and try and get better from it.
Oh, I love that. I like how you're able to just to like take the tidbits that you need and be like, oh, that idea was amazing. I'm gonna run with that. And then you're like, oh, well, I get it that worked for you, but I don't want to end up where you're at, so that one doesn't work for me. Um, and that's kind of like leads me to my next question. As you start evaluating new opportunities, whether it's opening a new venture or launching a new service or expanding into a new market, like what sort of questions do you ask or check off from boxes before moving forward?
So I'm very, very fortunate that I think I started early and young enough that I was always the least informed person in the room. And so I'm really comfortable hiring people that are smarter than me and really comfortable hiring people that know their area a lot better. And so like every time I'm having a team meeting, I'm like, I'm not the professional at X, Y, and Z. You are. Give me the options and let me choose, right? And so for me, the biggest thing that comes into factor when I'm making, an expansion, we get so many opportunities. I have four
Mhm.
leases on my table right now that I'm looking at choosing from, right? And so I get my finance team together, I get my marketing team together, and I get my operational team together. And I'm like, what do you think? Right. The reason that I brought you on and we've spent so much time getting to know each other is because you know exactly what our company goals are. You understand it better than anyone else does. So tell me from an operational, financial, and marketing side, which one do you like? And then I think after that, I sit with it. And I'm a big fan of the compass method, which is my way of saying that, every year I modify what I want my life to look like in 50 years from now. And what I would feel like if happened, I would be like, this is fantastic. And then I look back and I'm like, what is going to get me closer to that? Right? I know exactly where I want to end up. I just need to figure out how to get there and which of these gets me closest to it. So it's a combination of the two.
I love that. I do something similar. It's sort of the compass method. It's the old school vision board. And I got my 10, 20, 50-year plan up there. And then you're lucky enough where you do it once a year. I do it probably about every 3 months. I look at it and start moving things around. But setting those goals, those life goals, and then having your business basically work for you to achieve it is huge. We talk to a lot of business owners where their business has become their goal as opposed to their life, and the business is the avenue to get there. And I appreciate that because honestly, that's how I live my life now. I've done the corporate world where I would be working 12, 14 hours a day, and I just didn't love it anymore because it wasn't going to reach my goals. I was literally living to work and not working to live. And that is why I think a lot of entrepreneurs get into their new ventures and start their businesses because they kind of see that. But a lot of it is kind of lost along the way, I think. A lot of entrepreneurs have this great vision, right? But then they struggle to get it to execute. Um, how would you say, like, what are some of the, I don't know, check marks or road stops that you kind of cross to make sure that your vision is being executed?
This is going to be a very vague answer, and then I'll get into something a little more specific. But I think from a very young age, I was very lucky to see what hard work can make happen. So I've used this story. So, like, I never use the story, and then in the last 3 months, it's every time I talk, I use it. But for those that aren't tired of hearing it, I was born math dyslexic, and my parents sent me to Abacus, Kumon, and by the time I was 12, I competed in math Olympics for like I went to China to compete in the Olympics for math. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal as a kid, but watching myself be able to go from being obviously bottom of my class at math, not having my brain be able to think in it, to genuinely becoming so fluent in it that today, if I have a fight with my mom, which like she's my best friend, so if I fight with her, it's like a big deal for me. You will find me in a library sitting and plugging away at Excel sheets. Like I will be doing audits, I will be looking at tax reports. Like that is my safe place. And to be able to go from that to being so good at something that you're so comfortable in it, I think that it from a very early age taught me that like genuinely anything is possible if you're willing to work hard enough, right? And so I think that's sort of the prerequisite where you have to be delusional enough or naive enough, I don't even know what the word would be, but you need to genuinely believe from the bottom of your heart that you can do it and that you just need to put in the hours because I genuinely believe
Mhm.
that anything is possible. I think when you're looking at vision, however, there is something to be kept in mind that, you are not producing for yourself. You are producing for people to want to buy what you're putting out. And so there has to be a difference between ego and pride in your mind, right? You want to be proud of what you're doing, but you need to have enough control over your ego to be able to pivot to match demand, right? So my vision might be, I want to charge $4,000 and do the fanciest food in the world, but if no one's going to pay for it, then that vision, no matter how hard I work, is never going to come to life, right? And
Mhm.
actually, I shouldn't say that. It might. It might, depending on how hard you're willing to work. But most of the time, it makes sense to be able to put your ego aside long enough to be able to pivot to kind of fit what you're noticing is the demand, right? And we're lucky that there's so much exposure to information that you don't have to do the studies like Johnson used to have to do with they used to have to like get a group together and then do this and that. Like we're so lucky that if you were to just put it out on the internet, there's 100 opinionated ladies that'll respond on Nextdoor, that'll respond on Yelp, right? And will tell
Mhm.
you what they think. So we're very lucky we're living in the world of information. And so I would say pivoting and working hard are probably the two.
I love that. Just the idea of pivoting is, I think, where a lot of businesses struggle. They they have that goal, they have the perfect scenario in mind, and the unwillingness to pivot to accomplish that is honestly where I see a lot of businesses struggle. And it's how you said it was like it was perfect. Like I want to charge $4,000 for the most elegant meal in the world, but yet if somebody doesn't buy it, it doesn't do me any good. So you pivot, and yeah, we may get there one day. We may start to work towards it, but you got to start building that customer base, and then just the idea of reaching out to Nextdoor and Yelp and getting like the public opinion in the world of information that we're in. It seems kind of odd that more people don't do that, and I mean, gosh, I absolutely love that.
I think that
Uh,
it can be really overwhelming sometimes,
sure.
right? Because like if you go into even like a Blue Barn, right? It feels like a very family-run company, but you go and their spaces all look identical and they have their signage and their branding is so strong. So I think a lot of people, when you're looking at companies to aspire to be, you're looking at companies that have already achieved it. And so you're like, oh, I don't want to compromise because look, McDonald's always has this and this and this, right? And so I think that pivoting sometimes is hard to do because you see the competition that you have in your mind, not having to
Mhm.
pivot. And so it's just not something you're planning for when you start, I think.
Right, right. No, 100%. Um, so as we have grown like a wildfire, um, during your growth, what was your like approach to budgeting and resource allocation for both maintaining but also future growth opportunities? Or has it changed?
I think that obviously budgeting changes depending on what phase you're in, right? So when you're growing, you're reinvesting a lot more than when you're sort of at a, steady state. I think that the biggest sort of learning slash change is I worked in a lot of distressed companies, right? So
Mm,
I worked, obviously, our clinics were nonprofit, and then those were fully bootstrapped. And then I ran a CPG company, and when I bought it, they were losing 60K. I bought laundromats before that were losing, I think, like 30,000 a month. Like, so I started in companies that were really limited in cash flow. And so from the get-go, I became a little bit of a penny pincher, right? And so I think that when I went into starting ERIA, I was really lucky because like my brain was already thinking, okay, we're paying $4,000 for trash, right? Or we're paying this for PG&E. Are there any packages that I can get that are women discounted packages? Or like, are there for trash? Is there a way that I can have someone come pick up some of the food so that I'm not having to throw it? So I think from the get-go, when we started, I was very much like so, so, so tight about money, where I come from a math background. So I would look at my Excel sheet every day and I'd be like, okay, I'm spending this much on this. How do I cut it? How do I change this?
mm,
If I give a night free to a magazine, will they do a PR article about us, right? So like, how are we making trades of stuff that doesn't cost me anything because my property now is there? And so that was a big part. And I think the biggest shift was when we then got into growth phase and I had to like release that a little bit and be like, okay, Nikita, now you have a lot more employees. If you start micromanaging, if they get $30 ink versus $26 ink, you are going to kill yourself. Let it go. The $4 is not worth the 30 minutes it's going to take you to find out who ordered it and get them to change it. And so I think as we started to grow, releasing that budgeting a lot was definitely
mm,
something that was interesting because when you're growing, you need to focus on making sure your sales continue to come in and focus on like making sure that your experience and your brand stays the same. And so releasing some of that and expecting, like now this is so strange to say because like a year ago, I would have like, but I wouldn't have been able to sleep knowing this. But now I do see that I give myself 5% room for just waste, inefficiency. And I think building that into your financial model is really important during the
mm.
growth phase because things are going to fall off the wayside. You're not going to be able to have control over all of it because you're growing and there's more important fish to fry.
Ooh, I love that. There are more important fish to fry. Um, I don't know if you know what our company does is we help owners stay owners. We help owners keep the vision. And I think I've said that probably about 100 times. I'm like, I understand that you're worried about this, but for you, there are more important fish to fry. And that is, gosh, man, that's. I also love that you budget out the shrinkage in there, a 5% waste. I mean, I don't think that a lot of people, number one, I would assume that most owners don't have your very in-depth financial background, the mathematics behind it, and just planning for the waste in your budget, I think is monumental. It's honestly, it's probably one of the smartest things I've ever heard. Is that because it's one of those things where you are going to have waste, whether it's a sustainability or it's in a growth mode or anywhere, like if you plan it out to begin with, you're never shocked by it at the end of the year. That is killer. So as we're kind of talking about growing, over the next 3, 5 years, what areas of your business are you intentionally planning to develop? And are you preparing for today for the future growth?
This is interesting because I think it comes back to the idea that I know where I want to be in 50 years, but I try not to set too many hard rules. I have targets for the next 3 to 5 years, but I try not to set too much because then when you have to pivot, it's like when you're dating someone and you come up with a whole future for yourself and then you break up and you're like, "Oh no, my whole future is gone," right? And so similarly, I try not to tell myself this is exactly what I want 3 years from now, only because then if I get an opportunity that type kind of contradicts with it, I have a hard time giving up on stuff because I have that mental image. So we have KPIs such as like, our first year we did 6 million. My goal is to hit 15 at the end of this year. And then I do want to get to 25, right? But I don't set out where that's going to be because I
Mhm.
understand that the market is so quickly changing. I mean, a year ago, majority of our business was corporate events, and now we've really stepped into the social events, and they are taking up 30% of our revenue base, right? And now with those social events, we're having annual contracts, which I would have never even thought to propose. But I had a client who we did a wedding for, and he's like, Nikita, I don't want to ever plan with anyone else. I need you to sign an annual contract with me, get to, like, continue to get to know us, do my birthday, do my wife's birthday, do our kid's birthday, do our anniversary, do our international trips. He pays us 1.2 million, and I would have never thought that that was even an option because I would think that people want variety. And I think that people want variety within a turnkey model is such a new development in our industry where like I said, I would have never even thought to offer that to anyone, right? So I try not to project what I think my revenue sources are going to be for the next 3 to 5 years. I have suspicions, I have guesses, but I try not to put it out there because then I feel like I don't know, letting go of something that I might not be ready to let go of.
Sure. No, that's amazing. I like just the outlook on it. And that idea of just being able to constantly pivot. Like we still have our like target projections, but just like where it comes from, I don't know, because I am willing to take that odd opportunity that arises. And that you're not just pigeonholed to like, hey, this is my plan, this is exactly what we're gonna do. Um, because I mean, like, I think to be really honest, I don't think that the plan always works out for most people, and it is just a constant pivoting and adapting, and growth through it. Um, so, what advice would you give for an early entrepreneur about creating a business plan that's practical, adaptable, and capable of supporting long-term success?
I think that since my distressed business days, one of the biggest things that I've learned is I mean, there's always some level of cactus skin on the, expenses side, but I think the place to really start is to figure out how to build your revenue base, right?
Hmm.
And then that's where you want to start. And I think Sweetgreen did a really interesting job. I told you I speak so much in business analogies, but Sweetgreen did a really interesting job where they had really, really high costs and they continued to grow by producing a superior product, building out that brand experience, making sure people like what they're doing. And then now they're starting to get economies of scale and bring down costs, and they're now able to start to increase prices a little bit. I don't think they actually still have, but that's obviously something that they talk about constantly. And I think that that's a really intelligent way to operate on it because I think that in today's world, there is no such thing as a non-saturated market, right? Like unless you're a Sam Altman and you're discovering like open AI and open source, like there's very little new stuff to be discovered entirely. And it's more so a game of can you do it faster, more efficiently, better, or what improvement can you bring, right? And with that all in mind, I think focusing product first and seeing where you can find that demand is going to be the most important thing. So I would say focus entirely on building out that sales side, keeping in mind that obviously you only have as much runway as your cash flow, and then continuing to do the low hanging fruit that people don't want to do. So when we started we took so many events that nobody else wanted to do because they were difficult clients, because they didn't have the budget, whatever else. And I've tried to make money on those because their expectations weren't necessarily the same. And then that wasn't a representation of my brand. I was like, I'm doing this for cash, and I'm very clear that that's what I'm doing this for. And then on the other side, I was taking clients like my first wedding that we did, the $300,000 wedding. I didn't make a cent off of. I just covered costs because I was like, I want to see what I'm capable of and how many leads can I get from this. So I think building out almost two separate business plans is really interesting, and then connecting them both with your cash flow. So one is your business plan for show and for longevity and for your brand. And then the other one is to build out something that is more so to sustain your cash flow to be able to build this. Because once you get this and you get the revenue up, you can always figure out a way to get creative with costs. You can always have, like, now I have so many vendors that reach out to me and they're like, we're happy to donate our services because I know that if I can get in front of your clientele, I'll be set for life, right? And that'll
Mm,
come. And so I think it's really focusing on how do you grow those sales and how much money can you put into the most efficient way of marketing. So for us, the most efficient way of marketing is to give away our space for free, right? Because I
mhm.
already have it. It doesn't cost me anything. So 4 weeks out from a date, I will just send out a mass message to anybody and everyone, and I'll be like, hey, who wants to use it? Right? Because I don't, all of our events book at least 6 weeks in advance. So 4 weeks in advance, any date that I have open is otherwise going to be dead space. So
Mm.
anyone that I can, even if I just break even on my labor and I get 300 people in here, it can convert into sales, right? So I think building out whatever that most efficient budget is for you on marketing and really focusing on this business plan for your longevity and just making some cash on the side, taking the low hanging fruit is probably the biggest thing I would say when you're drafting out your business plan.
I I love that. So I come from a very heavy sales background, and we would always tell every company that I've always worked with, and I would just say, hey, listen, I understand that this has to happen, but
Yeah,
if your sales can't pay your bills, then you don't have a business at all. Um,
100%.
and some people took real offense to it, but I'm like, you don't have the revenue to operate. Like, let's get the revenue up, and then we'll deal with some of this other stuff on the side. And I think that coming from a very heavy sales background, that makes all the sense in the world to me. And I'm like, yep, absolutely. I need cash to move. I need cash to
A
move.
100%. And you can only cut costs so much, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, you don't want to live in a world where you're like, okay, I've cut costs and now I'm making $3 a day, right? And
Mhm.
I think that whether you're operating at a scale of 100 million, well, 100 million might be too much, but like my scale at 6 million is very similar to 1.3, 1.2 million, right?
Mhm.
Like you're working as many hours, you have as much staff. It's just a matter of how high quality the staff can be because of how much you can afford to pay them. And so I'm always a big believer in focus on those sales, and you will be so much happier. And there's so much more pride in what you're doing if you
Yes.
have the money to be able to do these little things, right? Like
Hmm.
if you have the money that, today I came in and I noticed that there was a little bit of a scratch on one of my walls. I love being able to call someone and saying, can you please fix this? And I would hate that if I wasn't able to do that, right? So I would say the goal isn't this hurts my math brain, like I told you, because I came from distressed companies. But I think the goal isn't to first find out the leanest company you can run. Efficiency and leanness will come later. Focusing on how can you do exactly what you said. How do I get my sales to a point where it is a revenue that I can exist within is going to be the most important part.
Yes. Huge, huge, huge. So before we finish up, we always ask this last question. And Nikita, what does it take to be a business owner?
Everything. It takes everything, and I think it takes genuinely loving it. I think that burnout is very real, and the only way to avoid it is to genuinely love what you're doing, being willing to work all hours of the day at it, and um, finding a sense of pride in what you do and understanding the difference between that and ego.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Nikita, thank you so much for joining us, sharing a little bit of your journey and your insights. Oh my gosh, life changing. Really, really appreciate it.
I
um,
appreciate you saying that.
and it's like, you're just how you've been able to build this business based on, being open to pivot and opening to learning and opening to make the mistakes, I think is just honestly, it's what most business owners just need to really grab onto and take heart. So I appreciate it. Thank you to everyone for joining in and listening to this conversation. Be sure to subscribe, drop us a like and a review. And we will see you next time on Business Owners Tell All What It Takes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Would you or someone you know like to be featured on this podcast? Our applications are now open. Apply today at seekersolution.com and click on the podcast link to get started.